Hey guys, it's Ben Barr. We were going to have a live stream today, but the powers that be at YouTube did not allow for it. So we have some issues on the account that we need to straighten out. So I'm recording this and we're going to put it out on the channel. And if you have questions or comments, feel free to drop them below and we can go back and forth that way. We're celebrating 6 months of doing this experiment and constitutional deep dives on YouTube. And we thought it might be a good time to pause and share a little bit about me as a person, what got me into constitutional litigation, and why did I start this channel. We're at about close to 5,000 subscribers on the channel. We have a decent number of hours of views, so I'm excited about that. I think there's more interest in it than I ever thought would occur. And I guess maybe we start with why I did this channel, and then I'll share a little bit about my life experience as a constitutional litigator. Uh, my first foray into YouTube and the like was with Peter Santinello. Peter runs a terrific channel where he explores hidden aspects of American life, such as going out with the Amish or going to see the Hasidic Jews in New York or going into the inner city of LA in a very compassionate, neutral sort of way. Shines a light on that and does a really great job. So when he was coming to Chicago, my wife recommended me to be able to provide a tour and explain why Chicago is one of the most corrupt cities in America. And I thought that was silly at first, but my wife was on to something, as she often is. And I took that opportunity, got to know Peter. I think we put together a good video, got a lot of good responses. And we had a follow-up video in DC because I lived in DC for about 15 years and went through some of the absurdities of what goes on there. And I received a lot of feedback from individuals that they'd love to see me start a channel. And I've always just wrestled with the idea of, boy, this is going to be a snooze fest. You do a channel on constitutional commentaries, people are going to go to sleep. Because my purpose is, I think there's a lot of material that's available that is highly saturated with political noise. There's signal and then there's noise. Signal is the true constitutional principles and legal principles that attach to a case or a series of cases that explain why it occurred. And then there's always a political overlay, and that's louder and it's easier to get into and it's emotionally exciting. This isn't emotionally exciting. I'm trying to make the channel interesting, but it has to be educational and it has to be able to provide that clean signal, that clean information without the drama. And so right away, I know that 80% of the audience isn't interested in that. They want soap operas, they want evil villains, they want Soros stories. That's not this channel. You can go find that in any number of places. But if you want something a little deeper, and that you can walk away after watching 10, 15, 20 minutes. We're trying to make the videos a little shorter and be able to distill that in your life, then I think I've done a good job. And I think people can do an easy background search on me. I'm a member of the Federalist Society. I serve on the advisory council for Republican National Lawyers Association. But I respect well-founded, good faith arguments from the left, and there's terrific scholars that I look to from that side, and I'll point those arguments out on this channel and grapple with that. We have a proud tradition of doing that in America. You can go back to Hamilton and Madison at the start of the country and who had very radically different views about the scope and role of the federal government and its powers. And we should be able to continue that tradition today, maybe with a little less of the political drama and shouting, and with a little more seriousness and earnestness. That's the purpose of this channel. So, to the 20% of America, or perhaps broader than that, who's interested in that, this is for you. And I want to edify and help people learn and grow in this by taking Some hot button issues. We touched deportations, for example, and went through 100 years of precedent and tried to show exactly why courts were ruling, why the Supreme Court was ruling in a way that seemed contrary. If you listen to legacy media and if you listen to some of the shouting, talking heads, why the Supreme Court was ruling in the way that it did, and to bring clarity to that. Because, for example, in the deportations area, it's just not the case that the due process we're all used to thinking about for citizens, it's not quite the same for either legal or illegal immigrants in the country. And that's not a political point. That's not ideological. That's just 100 years of case law. And it's helpful to be able to understand. Um, Another one of our popular videos was the Protesting 101 video, and that hit right around the time of the No Kings protests that were going on. So if you were on the left and you took the 5 rules that I put together and they were helpful for you to be able to understand where your rights were at and where government's power could rightly be used, then that's terrific. I'm not here to convert folks to one particular ideology. I want you to be able to feel that you've grown and you've learned something about our country and about constitutional principles, and you can have your own political arguments in whatever way you want. I want nothing to do with that because I have to deal with that every day in my real job. Maybe we step back here and we pause, and I can share a little bit about my life as a constitutional litigator. I went to law school in Chicago in 2001 and was going to work in telecom and internet law, very cutting edge sort of stuff. And I got an opportunity right at the last minute to be able to join a firm that was doing constitutional litigation, and particularly in the area of free speech litigation and political and nonprofit organizations. So I joined the firm, moved to Indiana, and the firm got its first case before the U.S. Supreme Court in a case called Republican Party of Minnesota versus White. I was the youngest, most inexperienced attorney at the firm, and I was just dead set to be on that case. And fortunately, the head of that firm was polite enough and kind enough to me to give me some work to do. And I came up with a radical theory about how to pursue a core claim in the case. The case involved Minnesota, which features a state Supreme Court that's entirely elected by the people, but had a ban on almost all speech about positions that judges might take in that state. How do you interpret the Constitution? Is it a living document? Are you an originalist? What are your views on the Second Amendment? How would you deal with minorities in the courtroom? And if you're going to vote for judges into a particular office, there's a right of the electorate to be able to receive information, just as there's a right of judges to be able to speak and share their opinion. So though the case had lost at the district court and the appellate court, the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals, we won. And the theory that I fashioned was based on some of Justice Scalia's earlier jurisprudence. We had the great happenstance that we drew Justice Scalia to write the majority opinion. He was tickled that we did so carefully structure our argument based on his own material. And after that point, I was given sort of a green light to be able to argue some cases around the country early in my career in federal courts that most lawyers wouldn't have gotten to do. So it was a terrific experience. It also exposed me to the side, we're trained sort of Americans instinctively think about campaign finance reform as a way that we prevent corruption and clean up, the dirty political system. And I'm on the other side of that. I take a very contrarian view. I think money in politics is a good thing. And I've worked with hosts and hosts of clients, most of them small little nonprofits who get caught up in paperwork errors and they get threatened to be sent to jail or have tremendous fines, or you just can't figure out the law and people are stymied from being able to speak. They're shut up, they're silenced, they're censored. And that really aggravates me. And so I learned a lot through that experience, and I've done a considerable amount of work in the field of campaign finance and challenging that. And after my time doing that in Indiana, I accepted a position at the Goldwater Institute in Phoenix, Arizona. Goldwater Institute's center right, classical, liberal, leaning libertarian organization, a think tank. I directed at Center for Constitutional Studies, and it was nice to be able to take a pause from litigation and to be able to move into think papers and to be able to explore ideas and write on things and have go to conferences and such. And, did some papers on eminent domain, wrote about taxpayer funded lobbying and how that damages a free marketplace of ideas, federal control of state budgets and spending and how that destroys state sovereignty. Just a terrific array of issues, and then worked on some amicus briefs as well. So after about 2 years or so at the Goldwater Institute, I received a call from the chairman of the Federal Election Commission asking if I might be interested in a position there as his counsel. And I was ecstatic. I was going through a terrible point in life. I had cancer. I had tremendous debt coming out of cancer. Was at the start of a divorce process. It was one of my lowest points in life. So I was elated to get the call. I wasn't sure how I was going to do this with my energy level and really just the fact that I was almost bankrupt. But figured out a way and moved to Washington and got started at the Federal Election Commission, was able to serve under two chairmen there, and went through a dispute between the president and the Senate about who the proper members were, got to see how that played out. And as a free speech advocate, as someone who has these first principles of natural liberty written on his heart, it was an interesting experience to go into what I think of as almost the enemy camp and see how the government agency operates and how it works very organically as a family. Folks who really believe that they are cleaning up politics by shutting people up and silencing them. So it was a good case study for me and time spent there. I got to serve under the second chairman was Don McGahn, who's a terrific warrior for free speech and the constitutional rule of law. And unfortunately, that was just a short time because my experience from cancer taught me things are short. I should embrace more risk in life. So I had reached out to clients, former clients, and donors, and was able to put together a small book of business and decided to give it a try. And with the idea that try it for 2 years, and if I fall on my face, I can always go work for government or be an associate somewhere. But if I figure out how to do this and I can generate that sort of business and be a boutique firm, well, then that's a great thing, and I get to be my own boss. And as a guy who grew up in a blue collar family in rural Wisconsin, well, that was a pretty powerful opportunity. As it turns out, I wound up finding that I do this free speech stuff pretty well, and my clients appreciate the talent that I bring to it. So I was able to keep working on things. An early opportunity came up in that time, a client that I work with from time to time, and folks that I really love, the Wyoming Liberty Group. I did my undergraduate in Wyoming, Laramie, Wyoming, and they wanted to file an amicus brief in the Citizens United case, and this was a terrific opportunity for me to bring both my practical experience, having been at the FEC, as well as my background in free speech litigation. And so my job there was to be able to point out to the court uh, that there was something terribly wrong going on at the FEC with the law that was being challenged. Now, I know Citizens United is the case everyone loves to hate. Most Americans get it wrong and don't understand it. You can see my earlier videos about that if you want to see my take on it. But it was ultimately about censoring speech. Citizens United involved a federal law that prohibited corporations, whether you were the NRA, Planned Parenthood, or Exxon, nonprofit or for profit, from being able to spend money on what's called electioneering communications or independent expenditures, just ads in support of candidates. And we don't do that in America. We don't silence and shut up people, even if they're rich or powerful or really sophisticated. So my job was to be able to show that the FEC had this two-prong, seven-factor test that if you're an average, say, the local NRA chapter, and you wanted to put together an ad criticizing the Senate, one of the senators in your state, there's no way you're going to work through that list of factors and be able to figure out if you're in the law or outside of it. If you guess wrong, guess what? You can go to prison or have a hefty fine. So the Supreme Court borrowed the language that I used there and said that it was the effective equivalent of a prior restraint. Essentially, too complicated of a test means that it's a ban. And this is what often happens in campaign finance. It's promised as this utopian panacea to cure corruption. But it winds up that the rich and powerful can pay, attorneys on K Street or folks like me with a boutique firm to be able to work through these standards and get their message out. But when you're the local Planned Parenthood or NRA, there's no way you're going to be able to do that. And those voices are shut up. Those voices are silenced. Those voices are censored. And that's what is obscene about campaign finance and why I got worked up about it and did so much work in that field against it. So I was tickled to have the mention in the Citizens United opinion. That was helpful in my career as well. Uh, Similarly, around a similar time, the former majority leader in Congress, Tom DeLay, where is he? He's right up over there. There he is, just above the McCarthy picture. Picture of him and I at the at Reagan airport some time ago. Uh, he had set up some political organizations in Texas, and he was moving money through them in the way that almost any other organization had for decades, Democrat or Republican. And there was just frivolous prosecution that was coming after him, a sort of lawfare, because he was a contrarian individual, was a very controversial individual, and so we came in to be able to explain essentially, we showed three rights do not make a wrong. So he had three lawful transactions, and they wanted to say that he was engaged in money laundering. So we were able to help with the case and get it up to the Texas Criminal Court of Appeals. So Texas has two state Supreme Courts, one for civil, one for criminal. We went up to their criminal Supreme Court, and they were able to borrow from our amicus brief some of the First Amendment principles and be able to show that Mr. DeLay was entirely innocent and just exercising his First Amendment rights. Indeed, what I call compliance, the prosecutors would have called evasion when you're following the law. So we're happy to be able to do that. And it wasn't just for Tom DeLay, but there were other folks who get caught up in these sorts of traps. So myself, along with my law partner, Steve Klein, who's a terrific guy, I'll talk more about him a little later. We were able to bring justice and be able to vindicate First Amendment principles in those cases. And I think that's a terrific thing. Somewhere around that time, I was able to meet James O'Keefe through a friend of a friend. James O'Keefe's one of America's leading undercover journalists. And, that's a very tricky field. And I happen to be sort of a creative guy, a little unorthodox in some of my approaches. And we really hit it off. And I admired the drive and passion and the similar sort of creative, unorthodox perspectives that James brought to the table. And he was looking for a lawyer who wasn't just going to write a long memo and charge him a very big fee to tell him no. And I think my job as a lawyer when I sign on with a client is to help them achieve their goals. So we were able to work together in a very good way. He was used to be with Veritas for some time. He's the founder and former CEO. And so I would do the compliance work, helping them find angles in the law to be able to do a particular operation. And then when they were sued, usually frivolously, to be able to defend those cases and be able to bring First Amendment principles to the fore and to be able to show why the particular set of investigations were protected. And we've had an incredible win rate. It's been terrific being able to do this sort of litigation and be able to cement and build protection for undercover journalism throughout America. Around that time too, other undercover journalists came to us because of this work. So we've been delighted to work with a variety of folks all across America, helping them set up operations, weighing in on legal questions about privacy and recording and these sorts of things. Documentarians come to us as well. We work with them on projects that are out there. And it's a terrific field because it's a field where there's very much a lot of room for innovative thought. There's a lot of gray space in the law, and you're balancing interest in privacy against free speech rights to be able to record and publish information that journalists get. I have it's called a petition for a writ of certiorari, a request for the Supreme Court to review a challenge we have to Oregon's law. It's currently pending there. I think we'll hear in the fall whether they accept it or not. And that's a terrific case where we initially won at the Ninth Circuit because Oregon has this curious thing where it says, excuse me, in most instances, if you want to record someone in most public settings, so there's a investigative reporter, say a public park, and there's a member of the Proud Boys there. And the investigative reporter, while they're rioting, has to say, excuse me, I'm recording you, has to give clear notice to them. And of course, we know what that does. That's to destroy any sort of candid recording at the time. Because if someone is committing an unlawful act, if someone's sharing some deep conspiracy with you, they're not going to do it when they know that there's a camera on, the lights are blaring, and the microphone's in your face. It has to be done in a covert, surreptitious sort of way. So Oregon's law effectively dampens and bans really important ways that journalists get information and report on it. And we won at the Ninth Circuit. They agreed that it was blatantly unconstitutional on its face. The state of Oregon asked that an en banc, a full panel of the Ninth Circuit, reconsider that. It did, and unfortunately reversed that opinion. So we are trying to convince the Supreme Court that the original Ninth Circuit opinion was correct, and maybe that it will accept the case. We got less than 1% chance of success of them accepting it because they are overloaded in their docket. But we're doing our level best to try to get them to accept the case and be able to move forward with it. And it's one of the neat things throughout the development of this case that animal rights groups have come in to support our First Amendment work. And it's really great because in a world that's hyperpolarized, where we have that political noise that I was talking about before, I've found advocates on the left who agree on the same signal, the same principle of free speech. They're focused on a totally different way. They want to go in and be able to show animal abuse, go in and observe agricultural operations, investigative journalism in that light. And it's fully protected in much the same way my clients who tend to lean conservative and libertarian want to do their recordings. So it's been a delight that they were able to look past ideological differences of clients and be able to agree on key First Amendment principles and come to our support. So PETA and a variety of animal rights groups have filed an amicus brief at the Supreme Court supporting us, as well as two noted First Amendment scholars who've done the same. And just so happy to see that, again, especially with today's political climate that we live in. So that's sort of my sort of a nutshell of me, of Benjamin Barr, of my professional life with a few personal glimpses too. I suppose I could note anecdotally too, other things that really interest me are in the realm of medical freedom because I've been through cancer, and I know what those hard choices are like in life. And it pains me that we have a Food and Drug Administration that cripples medical innovation in the United States. And by crippling that, effectively delays effective medicines and kills patients in America. Very big into individual moral agency, the ability of individuals to make decisions about medicine and about what they wish to ingest, to be able to defend their life and to be able to make those choices. And so some of my background side projects deal with that, with medical freedom. I'm currently consulting with Prospera, an organization that works on creating optimized cities around the globe where they create their own little sequestered areas of a sort of hybrid private government overlay where they can create optimized regulations in these spaces. And boy, I think it's the way to go. I think there's openings in America for that too. But it's just it's such an earnest and worthwhile place to be in life that I get to spend time on those sorts of projects as well. Free speech is where my heart is at. I love dissenters. I love the contrarians. That's why I've got this poster right behind me, Tiananmen Square, standing up to power. And with that comes attacks too. I've got another little poster right here, and that was a hit piece run on me. Benjamin Barr, the most corrupt lawyer at the center of everything. First Amendment lawyers, guess what? Represent controversial clients. Boring people generally don't have First Amendment claims to bring, and legacy media isn't going to, New York Times is not going to do a story like James O'Keefe did with the President Biden daughter diary. That's not going to be something that the New York Times runs. Maybe the New York Times of the 1960s, but not the New York Times of today. Legacy media isn't going to do that. It's these upstart, unconventional, contrarian, troublemaker sort of groups, and I love working with them. But you get attacked as well. I hope this video maybe sheds a little more light on me as a human being, as an advocate of free speech and the like. And again, I just coming back to where we started with the video. Purpose of this channel is to focus on signal. It's to focus on principles, not people. People come and go in Washington. Dangerous individuals or foolish leaders will come and go. But the underlying principles are the ones that will control the rule of law and the liberties that you get to enjoy on a day in, day out basis. And so my life is dedicated to protecting those primarily in the First Amendment area, though I do constitutional litigation and a few other spots. I think it's incredibly important. And you can go anywhere else for the political commentary and for the noise. But if you like the signal, if you want to be educated, I'm here to do that. Whether you're on the far left and a Bernie Sanders supporter, or you're a full MAGA President Trump supporter, I'm here for you because the Constitution protects all of us and it has something for each and every one of us to learn and be able to grow from. So our next video is going to touch on a touchy subject, the war powers of presidents, and whether you're convinced that President Trump needs to be impeached because of the recent bombings or whether you're fully supportive of him, guess what? You're both right. Because even the founding fathers of America couldn't agree on where these powers begin and end. So we're going to go through that. We're going to look at some of the founding fathers, early cases, and give material for both those of you on the left who decry this and those of you on the right who support it. And I'll let you have your own political squabbles on the side, but you'll be better educated, better armored to go in and do so. That's the video for today. I'm sorry it wasn't a live feed. That was the intent to do so, but we have problems, like I said, with YouTube. We'll see about getting those corrected. And we'll have a live feed, live stream that comes up in the future. So thanks, everyone, and we'll catch you again next time.